The black millionaire woman was mistaken for staff the moment she walked through the gleaming glass doors of Sterling Financial Group's downtown headquarters, carrying a simple leather handbag and wearing the kind of conservative business attire that spoke of professionalism rather than ostentation. What the employees bustling through the marble lobby could never have imagined was that the woman they automatically assumed was there to clean offices or deliver documents was actually Dr. Vivian Sterling, the 70-year-old founder and majority owner of the company whose paychecks they depended on for their livelihoods. The assumption happened so quickly and naturally that it revealed the deeply ingrained expectations that governed how people processed visual information about authority and belonging in professional spaces. Dr. Sterling, with her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun and her comfortable walking shoes chosen for navigating the building she had designed herself, simply didn't match the mental image that most people carried of what a multi-millionaire business owner should look like. "Excuse me," called Jennifer Martinez, a junior marketing associate who had been with the company for 8 months, but had never attended a company-wide meeting where Dr. Sterling was present. "Are you here for the cleaning contract? The facilities manager is on the 3rd floor, but you'll need to check in with security first and get a visitor's badge." Dr. Sterling paused in the lobby, studying the young woman's face with the same analytical attention she had once brought to evaluating potential business investments. Jennifer's assumption wasn't born of malice, but of a worldview that had been shaped by decades of seeing authority concentrated in the hands of people who looked very different from the woman standing before her. The automatic categorization was so complete that Jennifer had processed Dr. Sterling's presence, assessed her purpose, and provided directions without ever considering alternative explanations for why she might be in the building. "I'm not here for cleaning, Dr. Sterling replied gently, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to correcting misunderstandings without creating unnecessary conflict. "I'm here for the quarterly board meeting." Jennifer's expression shifted from helpful efficiency to confused uncertainty. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for the executive conference room on the 15th floor, a space reserved for the company's most senior leadership and their invited guests. The idea that this elderly black woman in her sensible shoes and understated clothing could be connected to that level of corporate hierarchy seemed to require a mental recalibration that Jennifer was struggling to complete. "Oh," Jennifer said, her voice carrying the particular tone of someone realizing they might have made an error but not yet understanding the magnitude of that mistake. Are you someone's assistant? I can call up to let them know you're here." The offer to call up to announce Dr. Sterling's arrival contained its own assumptions about hierarchy and belonging. Jennifer's mental framework could accommodate the possibility that Dr. Sterling might work for someone important enough to attend board meetings, but the concept that she might be the person for whom such announcements were typically made remained outside the bounds of immediate consideration. Dr. Sterling had experienced variations of this interaction countless times throughout her 45-year business career, from the early days when she had been a young engineer trying to establish credibility in male-dominated engineering firms, to her current status as one of the region's most successful business owners. The assumptions had evolved over the decades, shifting from doubts about her technical competence to questions about her authority to make decisions, but the underlying pattern remained remarkably consistent. What made this particular moment especially significant was not just the personal slight, but what it revealed about the culture and expectations within the company she had built from nothing into a regional powerhouse. Sterling Financial Group had grown from Dr. Sterling's one-woman consulting practice in 1978 to a multi-million-dollar firm employing over 200 people across 3 states. But apparently that growth had not been accompanied by the kind of cultural awareness that would prevent employees from making automatic assumptions about who belonged in positions of authority. The company had been founded on principles of financial empowerment and economic opportunity for underserved communities, with Dr. Sterling's personal mission being to provide access to capital and financial services for small businesses and individual clients who had been overlooked by traditional financial institutions. The irony that her own employees were now demonstrating the same unconscious biases that had motivated her original business model was not lost on her, though it was deeply disappointing. "Let me try a different approach, Doctor," Sterling said, reaching into her handbag to retrieve the executive keycard that would provide access to all floors of the building. "I'm Dr. Vivian Sterling, and this is my company." The statement hung in the air between them like a challenge to everything Jennifer thought she understood about corporate hierarchy and business ownership. The keycard in Dr. Sterling's hand bore the distinctive black stripe that indicated executive-level access, and her calm delivery of what should have been shocking news suggested that she was accustomed to having this conversation and confident in her authority to make such claims. Jennifer's face cycled through a series of expressions as she processed the implications of Dr. Sterling's statement. The company founder was a figure of legend within Sterling Financial Group, spoken of with reverence during orientation sessions and company meetings, but Jennifer had never seen her photograph in the lobby displays and had somehow formed mental images that bore no resemblance to the woman standing before her. "You're Dr. Sterling?" Jennifer asked, her voice dropping to a whisper as she began to understand the magnitude of her mistake. "The founder? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I assumed." Her apology trailed off as she realized that explaining her assumptions would only make the situation worse. The truth was that Jennifer had never considered the possibility that the company's founder and CEO might be an elderly black woman, despite working for a firm that specialized in serving diverse communities and promoting economic inclusion. The disconnect between the company's mission and her own unconscious expectations had created a blind spot that had just led to a professionally embarrassing encounter with the person who ultimately determined her continued employment. Around them, the lobby continued its usual morning activity, with employees flowing toward elevators and security guards checking visitor credentials. Most of the bustle was routine and unremarkable, but Dr. Sterling noticed other staff members glancing toward their conversation with obvious curiosity about why a visitor was having an extended discussion near the security desk rather than proceeding directly to her intended destination. The scene was developing exactly as Dr. Sterling had feared it might when she decided to make unannounced visits to company locations to observe operations and culture firsthand. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes, but she had arrived early specifically to walk through the building and observe how employees interacted with unexpected visitors and whether the company's stated values of inclusion and respect were being demonstrated in daily operations. As Dr. Sterling made her way toward the elevator bank, using her executive keycard to access the restricted floors. She reflected on the journey that had brought her from a young black woman with an engineering degree and $500 in savings to the owner of a company that now managed over $800 million in assets and employed 237 people across multiple states. The path had been neither straight nor simple, marked by countless moments when others had underestimated her capabilities based on assumptions about her appearance, her background, or her right to occupy spaces traditionally reserved for others. Sterling Financial Group had been born in 1978 when Dr. Sterling, then 33 years old, with a master's degree in industrial engineering and an MBA in finance, had been repeatedly passed over for promotions at the large consulting firm where she had worked for 8 years. Despite consistently exceeding performance targets and bringing in new clients, she had watched less qualified male colleagues advance to senior positions while she was praised for her attention to detail and her supportive role in team projects that she had actually led. The breaking point had come during a client presentation where her division chief had introduced her to potential clients as our technical support specialist, despite the fact that she had designed the entire financial restructuring plan that was being presented. When the clients began directing their questions to her male colleagues, assuming they were the decision makers and strategy developers, Dr. Sterling had realized that her career advancement within traditional corporate structures would always be limited by others' inability to see her as an authority figure. The decision to start her own firm had required not just professional courage, but also personal financial sacrifice that few people ever knew about. Dr. Sterling had liquidated her retirement savings, sold her small house, and moved in with her elderly mother to reduce living expenses while building her client base. For the first 3 years, she had worked 18-hour days, handling everything from complex financial analysis to typing her own correspondence, determined to prove that a Black woman could build and run a successful financial services company. The early clients had been small businesses and individual entrepreneurs who had been rejected by traditional banks and financial institutions, often for reasons that had more to do with bias and assumptions than with actual creditworthiness or business potential. Dr. Sterling had developed expertise in recognizing viable opportunities that others missed, and her success rate in helping clients achieve their financial goals had gradually built a reputation that attracted larger and more profitable accounts. By 1985, Sterling Financial Group had grown large enough to require additional staff, and Dr. Sterling had made a deliberate commitment to creating a workplace culture that valued competence and character over appearance and connections. She had instituted hiring practices that emphasized skills and potential rather than traditional credentials, and had established mentorship programs that helped promising employees develop leadership capabilities regardless of their backgrounds. The company's growth through the 1990s and 2000s had been driven by Dr. Sterling's innovative approaches to risk assessment and client development, particularly her focus on serving markets that other financial institutions overlooked or undervalued. Her ability to identify and develop profitable opportunities in underserved communities had not only generated substantial returns for her company, but had also created economic opportunities for thousands of individuals and families who might otherwise have been excluded from traditional financial services. If this story is touching your heart, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. What made Dr. Sterling's current experience in her own lobby particularly troubling was that it suggested her company's hiring and training practices had failed to instill the cultural awareness and inclusive thinking that she had worked decades to develop. The automatic assumptions that had led Jennifer to mistake the company founder for cleaning staff indicated that despite all the diversity training and inclusion initiatives, some employees still operated from unconscious biases that contradicted the company's core mission. As the elevator carried her toward the executive floors, Dr. Sterling encountered Marcus Williams, a mid-level loan officer who had been with the company for 4 years and should have recognized her from company meetings and annual reports. Marcus glanced at her presence in the executive elevator with obvious confusion, his expression suggesting that he was trying to determine whether she belonged in that space. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his tone polite but clearly questioning. "This elevator is restricted to executive staff and authorized visitors. Are you sure you're on the right elevator?" The question revealed the same pattern of assumptions that had characterized her lobby encounter, but coming from a more senior employee who should have been familiar with company leadership, it indicated that the problem was more systemic than Dr. Sterling had initially realized. Marcus had attended company meetings where she had spoken, had received annual reports featuring her photograph, and had benefited from policies and procedures that she had personally designed. Yet he still couldn't recognize her as someone who belonged in executive spaces. "Marcus," Dr. Sterling said, using his name deliberately to signal that she knew who he was, "I'm exactly where I need to be. How are your Q3 numbers looking? I know you've been working on that community development loan portfolio, and I'm interested in hearing about your progress." Her specific knowledge of his work and her casual use of insider information about quarterly reporting schedules should have immediately identified her as someone with executive-level access to company operations. But Marcus seemed to struggle with reconciling this information with his expectations about who should be asking such questions. The elevator reached the 15th floor, and Dr. Sterling stepped out into the executive reception area where her assistant, Patricia Chen, was preparing materials for the board meeting. Patricia's face immediately brightened with recognition and relief, suggesting that she had been wondering about Dr. Sterling's whereabouts as the meeting time approached. "Dr. Sterling," Patricia said warmly, "I was starting to worry that you might be running late. The board members have been arriving, and I have your presentation materials ready in the conference room." Marcus remained in the elevator, his expression showing the dawning realization that he had just questioned the authority of his company's founder and CEO to use her own executive elevator. The doors closed before he could formulate an appropriate response, leaving Dr. Sterling to wonder how many other employees shared his unconscious assumptions about authority and belonging. The pattern of encounters during her brief journey from lobby to executive floor had revealed a troubling disconnect between the company's stated values and the practical application of those values by staff members at various levels. Dr. Sterling understood that changing deeply ingrained social assumptions required more than policy statements and training sessions. It demanded ongoing commitment to examining and correcting the unconscious biases that shape daily interactions and workplace culture. The quarterly board meeting had been proceeding normally for 20 minutes when Dr. Sterling made the decision that would transform not just that day's agenda, but the entire future direction of Sterling Financial Group's corporate culture and employee development programs. Instead of presenting the standard quarterly financial reports and strategic updates, she stood at the head of the mahogany conference table and shared the details of her morning encounters with employees who had failed to recognize the founder and CEO of their own company. "Before we review our Q3 performance metrics, Dr. Sterling began, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had commanded respect in boardrooms for decades. "I want to discuss a more fundamental issue that affects every aspect of our operations and our ability to serve our clients effectively. This morning, I was mistaken for cleaning staff in our own lobby, questioned about my right to use our executive elevator, and treated as an unauthorized visitor in the building that houses the company I built from nothing over 45 years ago." The silence that followed her statement was profound and uncomfortable, filled with the kind of tension that accompanies moments when hidden truths are suddenly exposed to examination. The board members, a mix of external advisors and senior company executives, exchanged glances that revealed varying degrees of surprise, embarrassment, and concern about the implications of what they had just heard. Board member Robert Chen, Patricia's husband, and a respected business consultant who had worked with Dr. Sterling for over a decade, leaned forward with obvious concern. "Vivian, are you saying that our own employees didn't recognize you? How is that possible after all these years?" The question opened the door for a conversation that Dr. Sterling had been preparing to have for months, ever since she had begun noticing subtle signs that the company's rapid growth might be diluting the cultural values and awareness that had been central to its mission from the beginning. The morning's encounters had simply provided concrete evidence of problems she had been sensing in less obvious ways. "It's possible, Robert, because we've allowed our hiring and training practices to focus more on technical competencies than on the cultural awareness and unconscious bias recognition that should be fundamental to working at a company whose mission centers on serving diverse communities," Dr. Sterling explained. "We've grown so quickly that we've brought people into leadership positions without ensuring they understand not just what we do, but why we do it and who we are as an organization." Dr. Sterling's presentation shifted from the planned financial review to a comprehensive analysis of what she called cultural competency gaps within the organization. She had been documenting patterns for months, the subtle ways that certain clients were prioritized over others, the assumptions made about creditworthiness based on appearance and background, the informal networking and advancement opportunities that seemed to favor employees who fit traditional corporate profiles. "This morning's incidents weren't isolated events," she continued, pulling up documentation that she had been quietly compiling. "They're symptoms of a broader pattern where employees at various levels are operating from assumptions and biases that directly contradict our company's founding principles and our stated commitment to inclusive financial services." The board members reviewed the data with growing awareness of how serious the situation had become. client satisfaction surveys revealed subtle but consistent patterns of differential treatment. Employee advancement statistics showed disparities in promotion rates that couldn't be explained by performance metrics alone. Exit interviews from departing staff members included comments about feeling excluded from informal networks and decision-making processes. Dr. Sterling's analysis revealed that while the company had maintained its financial success and continued to serve its target markets effectively, the internal culture had begun to drift away from the values and awareness that had originally distinguished Sterling Financial Group from traditional financial institutions. The irony was that employees were treating their own founder with the same unconscious biases that the company had been founded to address and overcome. The question we need to answer today, Dr. Sterling said, is whether we're going to recommit to being the kind of organization that truly embodies the values we claim to represent, or whether we're going to accept that our success has made us complacent about the very principles that created that success in the first place. The board voted unanimously to implement comprehensive cultural awareness and bias recognition training for all employees, starting with leadership and extending throughout the organization. Dr. Sterling insisted that the training be ongoing rather than one-time, integrated into performance evaluations and advancement criteria, and regularly assessed through employee feedback and client service metrics. But more immediately, she made the decision to address the morning's incidents directly with the employees involved, not as disciplinary action, but as teaching opportunities that could help the entire organization understand the gap between stated values and daily practices. Jennifer Martinez was called to the executive conference room during the lunch break, expecting to receive feedback about a marketing project, but instead finding herself face-to-face with Dr. Sterling and the company's HR director. The conversation that followed was gentle but direct, focused on helping Jennifer understand not just what had happened that morning, but why it mattered and how it connected to broader patterns of assumption and bias that affected both workplace culture and client service. "Jennifer," Dr. Sterling said, "I want you to understand that this morning's interaction wasn't primarily about you making a mistake. It was about all of us, myself included, failing to create a workplace culture where such mistakes become impossible because everyone understands who we are and what we represent." Jennifer's response revealed the depth of her embarrassment and her genuine desire to learn from the experience. "Dr. Sterling, I keep thinking about what I assumed when I saw you, and I'm horrified by my own thoughts. I work for a company that's supposed to be about inclusion and opportunity, and I made exactly the kind of assumptions that our clients probably face every day." The insight that Jennifer had gained about the connection between her personal assumptions and the broader client experience marked the beginning of what would become a company-wide transformation. Dr. Sterling realized that the morning's difficult experiences had actually provided an opportunity to address problems that might otherwise have continued growing beneath the surface until they seriously damaged the company's mission and effectiveness. Marcus Williams' conversation with Dr. Sterling later that afternoon focused on his role as a mid-level manager and the responsibility that came with his position to model inclusive thinking and challenge assumptions among his team members. His recognition that he had questioned the founder's right to use her own elevator had led to profound self-reflection about the unconscious biases that had shaped his perceptions and decision-making. "Dr. Sterling," Marcus said, "I've been thinking about how many times I might have made similar assumptions about clients or colleagues without even realizing it. If I could mistake you for someone who didn't belong in our executive area, what other judgments have I been making that affect how I serve our clients and work with my team?" 18 months after the morning when Dr. Vivian Sterling was mistaken for staff in her own company's lobby, Sterling Financial Group had become a model for corporate cultural transformation and inclusive leadership development that other organizations across the country were studying and attempting to replicate. The changes that had begun with uncomfortable conversations about unconscious bias had evolved into a comprehensive approach to business operations that had not only improved workplace culture, but had also significantly enhanced client satisfaction and company profitability, The transformation had started with what Dr. Sterling called assumption audits, systematic reviews of client interactions, employee advancement patterns, and decision-making processes that revealed the subtle ways that unconscious biases were affecting business outcomes. Every department had participated in monthly sessions where real scenarios were examined and discussed, helping employees recognize their own blind spots while developing strategies for more inclusive and effective service delivery. Jennifer Martinez had become one of the program's most passionate advocates, using her own experience of making assumptions about Dr. Sterling to help train new employees and facilitate difficult conversations about bias and belonging. Her role had evolved from junior marketing associate to director of cultural awareness and inclusion training, a position that had been created specifically to ensure that the company's growth would never again outpace its commitment to inclusive values. "When I think about that morning 18 months ago," Jennifer often told new employee orientation groups, "I realize I was operating from assumptions that I didn't even know I had." Dr. Sterling could have been angry or disappointed, but instead, she used my mistake as a teaching moment that changed not just my career, but my entire understanding of how unconscious bias affects everything we do. Marcus Williams had undergone his own professional transformation, becoming a senior vice president whose leadership style emphasized curiosity over assumptions and whose team consistently achieved the highest client satisfaction ratings in the company. His experience of questioning Dr. Sterling's right to use her own elevator had become a regular part of his management training presentations, where he helped other supervisors understand how unconscious biases could undermine both team effectiveness and client service quality. The company's client base had expanded significantly as word spread about Sterling Financial Group's genuine commitment to inclusive service and cultural competence. Businesses and individuals who had experienced discrimination or dismissive treatment at other financial institutions began seeking out Sterling Financial Group specifically because of its reputation for seeing potential where others saw problems and for treating all clients with equal respect and attention. Dr. Sterling had instituted quarterly cultural temperature checks where employees at all levels could provide anonymous feedback about workplace dynamics, bias incidents, and suggestions for improvement. The feedback had revealed that the transformation had created not just better client service, but also higher employee satisfaction, lower turnover rates, and more innovative problem solving, as diverse perspectives were genuinely valued and incorporated into business decisions. The financial impact of the cultural transformation had exceeded everyone's expectations. Client retention rates had improved by 37%, new client acquisition had increased by 52%, and employee productivity had risen measurably as workers felt more valued and engaged in their roles. The correlation between inclusive culture and business success had become so clear that Dr. Sterling had begun consulting with other organizations seeking to achieve similar transformations. The lobby of Sterling Financial Group's headquarters now featured a prominent display about the company's history and leadership, including a large photograph of Dr. Sterling and information about her 4-decade journey from young engineer to successful business owner. The display served both as education for visitors and as a daily reminder for employees about the importance of recognizing leadership and expertise in all its forms. If this story moved you, don't stop here. Click the next one, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes in kindness. More importantly, the company had established the Dr. Vivian Sterling Institute for Inclusive Leadership, a training and research center that provided consulting services to other organizations while also developing new approaches to bias recognition and cultural competence in professional settings. The institute had become self-sustaining within its first year, generating revenue while advancing the broader mission of creating more inclusive and effective business environments. The elevator incident that had once embarrassed Marcus Williams had become the inspiration for a company policy requiring all employees to participate in assumption interruption training, where they learned to pause and examine their initial reactions to unfamiliar people or situations. The policy had been so effective that other companies had begun implementing similar programs after seeing Sterling Financial Group's results. Dr. Sterling's unannounced visits to different company locations had become a regular practice, but with a difference. Employees now recognized her immediately and welcomed her presence as an opportunity to share successes and seek guidance, rather than questioning her right to be in her own building. The change represented not just improved awareness of leadership, but a fundamental shift in organizational culture that valued curiosity and inclusion over assumptions and exclusion. The most meaningful transformation had been in the company's approach to client service, where the lessons learned from examining employee assumptions had been applied to ensuring that all clients received respectful and competent assistance regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived economic status. Client testimonials frequently mentioned feeling truly seen and valued by Sterling Financial Group staff, a level of service that had become the company's distinctive competitive advantage. As Dr. Sterling approached her 72nd birthday, she reflected on how the morning when she was mistaken for staff had ultimately strengthened both her company and her legacy in ways that conventional success metrics could never have measured. The incident that could have been dismissed as an unfortunate misunderstanding had instead become the catalyst for transformation that had made Sterling Financial Group a more effective organization and a more authentic embodiment of its founding values. The company's success had attracted acquisition offers from larger financial institutions, but Dr. Sterling had consistently declined them, understanding that the cultural transformation she had achieved was too valuable and too fragile to risk diluting through merger or acquisition. Instead, she had begun developing succession plans that would ensure the company's inclusive leadership approach would continue long after her eventual retirement. In her office overlooking the downtown district where she had started her business 45 years earlier, Dr. Sterling kept a framed copy of the first assumption audit report that had documented the cultural gaps revealed by her morning encounters with employees. The report served as a reminder that transformational change often began with uncomfortable truths, and that the willingness to examine and address those truths was what distinguished truly successful organizations from those that merely achieved temporary financial gains. The woman who had once been mistaken for cleaning staff had used that experience to create lasting change that extended far beyond her own company, demonstrating that true leadership meant turning moments of discomfort into opportunities for growth, understanding, and positive transformation that benefited everyone involved.